Hi everybody, Heidi here from Ann Arbor District Library, and today I am making a video to show you how to crochet a granny square. Granny squares are great motifs that can be used. You could just keep making more and more rounds and make it really large, turn it into a blanket, maybe a pillow covering. You can do individual squares that you join together. A couple different methods to do that. You can make it into, a purse or a bag or, scarf, something like that. A lot of applications for the basic granny square. And there's also other granny square patterns out there, but today we're just going to work with the traditional, which is these clusters. It's 3 double crochet stitches with 2 chains that make a corner. And I'm going to show you what all those things are, especially if you're really new to crochet. This is a great way to get started with getting comfortable with holding the hook and navigating the tension of the yarn, so that you can, use those skills and apply them to other projects in the future. All these videos, they're archived on our channel, so go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any of the upcoming content, but also it's a really good way for you to link back to the videos we have out there. Because with something like this, it can be hard to work along in the same, real time. So it's a good thing to reference and go back to. You can pause it where you need to kind of catch up in your steps to get to where I am in the video. And I have my way of working, and this might just get you kind of started and interested. You can always Google around too for more videos and because sometimes different teachers might speak to you in a different way that's going to help you understand how to do the craft. But so go ahead and like the video. That helps it get out there more to other people, and subscribe to the channel. Okay, so our supplies that I'm using today. I have what is called a crochet hook, and this is an I size, or 5.5 millimeter. It doesn't have the lettering on it. Sometimes they do. You could also use an H size hook. I wouldn't go smaller than that. You could maybe go a little bit bigger to a J, depending on what you have available. And it also depends on how tight your tension is as you crochet. So you'll learn that as you go. Alright, also having a pair of scissors, and then this is a large-eyed needle, kind of like a tapestry needle. Generally it's pretty blunt at the tip, so that way it's useful for sewing the squares together, or also in crochet you use it to weave in your ends. I personally like to try and crochet over my ends as I go, the ends being like this tail. So I like to work it into the project, that way I don't have to do so much weaving in later. And even if you're a beginner, I think it's fine to start learning that technique. It's a little fiddly maybe, but everything is kind of fiddly when you're first starting out. Okay, so here is a 4-round granny square, and I'll get you started on how to make one. So first we will need some yarn, and the nice thing too about granny squares is it uses up a lot of scrap yarn. You don't necessarily, need a lot for each round, depending on how big your rounds are. So here we have this lovely shade of pink. So the first step is we need to make a slip knot to slip that loop onto the hook to have something to be working with. So I'm going to take this, and it is making it kind of into a U shape, taking what is the tail and crossing it over the working piece of the yarn. So I've got this loop, and if we take the loop and fold it over, you can see here is the tail, here is the working yarn underneath that loop. Oops, all I need to do, take the hook and place it under what is the working yarn. So you see this is the tail, working yarn, and holding on to these two, just pull it, and it tightens up into a slip knot. Slip knot meaning it can slide along the working yarn, so you can tighten it up. But you don't want to get too tight. Do keep a bit of a gap so that this can slide along in the hook. Now the next step is your most basic, is a chain stitch, the most basic stitch you'll do. Simply bringing the yarn over the hook. If you were sitting where I am in my position, it would be bringing the yarn from back towards you. So it's kind of from back to front. Either way, so you have a yarn over is what that's called. And now I will pinch and hold that stitch, the base of that stitch. That helps it to keep it from twisting and turning around on the hook. So just kind of hold on to that. So first I'm holding with my right index finger, keeping that in place, and then wrapping it over. Hold the tail, and then just, because that helps keep it nice and open, if you can see, and pull the loop through. You want to be gentle. You want to pull it tight. You know, keep your work pretty, stay loose when you're crochet, alright? So again, I'm yarning it over, wrapping it around the hook, and then just pulling that through the loop. Make my second chain stitch. Now we need 2 more. Okay, and you may be able to see we have 4 stitches. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I need to make this into a circle. By doing that, I will just go into the first stitch, which is this one here. And with each of these, there's 3 different strands. So I want to try and go through 2 of them, or have 2 of them on one side here. Yarn over, pull up a loop, get the tail out of the way. Okay, so now as I pull this open, this is the stitch, this is the center of my circle. So sometimes that gets a little bit confusing, being able to see that. But as I pull it tight, okay, it closes that up and it helps keep, you know, your center of your circle more open. And I just like to hold my finger in there initially to help make sure I don't lose that space. Common thing to do is to end up working into one of the stitches itself instead of working into the center, and it makes for kind of a funky shape over time. Alright, so I've got my loop, and I'm just going to pull that loop through and slip stitch is what that's called, or it's a joining slip stitch basically. So that has joined all 4 stitches together. The granny square is made up of, for this pattern, your traditional granny square is made up of a double crochet, and there is single crochet, half double crochet, and then double crochet. So they get taller as you go. You know, triple crochet is going to be even longer. So we need to set our row height, and for a double crochet, that's going to be 3 chains. So again, got my yarn over. I'm going to hold on to the work to keep it somewhat tight, some tension there, and then I can just slide the hook through, and that's 1 chain, 2 chains, 3. You have 3 chain stitch. And now we can work the double crochet, and if you don't do that, the first double crochet is going to be really kind of squished and just not standing at its full height. Alright, so now double crochet. Again, you begin by yarning over, wrapping the yarn over the hook. Going to work inside the circle, so going through, and then the yarn's already kind of laying there conveniently, so you just pull up a loop. I have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. You can see we're at a good height. Second or third one technically. Pull up 2, yarn over, holding, pull through 2. So I said technically it's your third stitch because this chain is stitch 1 of the cluster. And every round will begin that way for this pattern. Next we need to make the corner. So you can see we have these 4. And a granny square doesn't have to be square. You could do 5, you could do 6 or 8, but each time there is a corner section, there would be 2 chain stitches. So that's what we're going to do next. Yarn over, and holding, kind of pinching here with my index, left thumb, pull through. Yarn over, pull through. Next cluster of 3 double crochet. Yarn over, insert through the circle, pulling up a loop. I've got 3 loops on my hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through first 2 loops, now there's 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2. And the third one. Okay, hope you can see that clearly. Yarn over, and then we have chain, yarn over, and chain. 2 chains making a corner, so let's keep going. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. It's 1, 2, 3. So I'm kind of speeding up a little bit here so we can get to the end of this round. One more we need. One more cluster we need. Over, poking it through, pulling up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And one more. Okay, and chain 2 to make the corner stitch. And we're back to that 3 chain stitch. And we need to join. So you can see here, if I zoom in just a touch, oops, what happened to my focus? There we go. All right. So you can see 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go underneath those 2 strands, yarn over, pull that loop through, and then just pull it through there. And that's going to join it. Yarn over again, pull up the loop, pull it tight, snip, just pull the tail through. Now you have round 1. I'm just going to snip off this tail because it's fairly secure. I was crocheting over it as I went through those steps. Okay, so don't always see the shape as cleanly right now, but as we add more rounds, that's coming out pretty good. Okay, so I do like to work over these tails as I crochet. So that's just laying it over, and then the next round of stitches will go over it. But it's useful to have the tail going in the same direction as I'm crocheting. So what I like to do, I just don't like to have to weave in all my ends at the end, so I like to, do it this way. So first I am putting it under that stitch and just pulling this strand through. Could also do this with the needle. So here's another opening, poking this hook through, pulling that through there, and now kind of lays right in that corner. Okay, let's switch colors. So, try this purple lilac color. Now, you always have to start with that slip knot when you're starting the new color of yarn. So I've laid this on the surface, pick up the tail, cross it over. So you have working yarn and the tail. Take the loop, fold it. It looks like a pretzel shape. Recognize that's the tail. This is the working yarn. Put your hook under the working yarn and hold both pieces and then just pull and it tightens it up. Now beginning our next round, I'm going to hold this tail so it drapes over where I'm going to be stitching, so that way it'll automatically be worked in. And if that's confusing for you in the beginning, don't worry about having to do it that way. I just like to show that way because it's my preference. It's how I work. It's efficient. That's why, again, it's good, especially when you're learning a new technique. I know I'll watch 2 or 3 videos at least. I'll check a couple people's blogs to understand their wording of how I'm learning a new stitch. Because there can be more than one way to do something, and it's just a matter of being consistent in your technique, and it'll all work out. Alright, so to start the next round, I have my yarn on the hook. I'm just going to go into that corner space, and the tail as well is being held there. Okay, pull up a loop, and then just pull that loop right on through there, and now I've joined the new color. I'm just kind of tightening it down, and we begin again with chain 3. So yarn over, pulling that loop through, yarn over, pull the loop through, again kind of stabilizing with the right index finger when I yarn over, and then holding with the left thumb and index finger, pulling through. So kind of using both hands, even though it's one hook, still use both hands when crocheting. Now we have to complete this first cluster, so we do another double crochet by yarning over, going through the corner space, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through just 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the next 2 loops. Over. And now we're at a quarter, so we need 2 chains. 1, 2, so that we can turn the corner. And in this same space, we do another set of 3 double crochet. Yarn over, pulling up loop, yarn over, pull through 2. So I can hold this, and the way I'm holding my working yarn, I can also just dip my hook under it, and that's my yarn over instead of having to wrap it. We'll find what way, again, is most comfortable for you. I kind of alternate sometimes how much I'm using my wrist or moving with my left hand. Okay, now how do I get from this corner over this cluster to the next corner? All you need to do is chain 1. Just 1 chain in between the corners. Now I'm in a corner space again, so I can work my cluster, and as you can see, that tail from the last round is just laying over there, and it's already starting to be captured by the yarn. And it'll be held in place that way, so I won't have to weave in all those ends at the finish. Again, you're at a corner space, so now it's 2, 1, 2, and another 3 double crochet cluster. And just keep making sure that you're, due diligence, that you're working into the corner space and not accidentally into a chain or into another stitch. And also, as we work in more rounds, you want to make sure that you're always, lining your corners up in the corner. It happens sometimes that you're working along and you end up putting a corner in a space ahead of time. Okay, so now to transition from this corner to that corner, it is 1 chain. And now the next cluster. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, double crochet, yarn over, insert hook, pull up a loop, 2 chains in the corner, and another cluster, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Now let's move on to the next round. So I have here 2 rounds. And sometimes you can just do a 2-round granny square and join those together a little bit smaller. Sometimes people do like kind of crazy Afghan crazy granny square where they're different sizes. When I show you how to join, you could, match up different sizes together, and that's kind of fun sometimes too. It takes a little bit of planning, or maybe not too much, I don't know. Depends on how organized you want to be about it. So moving along, we're going to do the next round, and just go back to that pink color and making the slip knot, bringing the tail over, bringing the loop over. This is my working yarn. It's the one that runs underneath everything else, right? The tail's crossed over, the loop is crossed over. Pick up the yarn, hold both pieces, and there we go, slip knot. Joining, usually it's best to join in the corner, but whatever you, again, prefer. Some people like to start in the middle. Some people like to do 1 cluster in the corner and then finish in the corner. There are different ways. Alright, so I have a piece, insert the hook, got it going over that tail piece, so I can pull up a loop, starting to capture that tail, pull it through, and I've joined the yarn, and now 3 chains to start. 1, 2, 3. Alright, now double crochet. Okay, so some people, as they go along, what I was trying to say earlier, which might not have been very clear, is instead of doing both clusters, it might just leave it here and then finish, by doing the next cluster at the end. It's just whatever keeps it straight in your mind. Okay. 2 chains, my second cluster, because I'm going to make the corner right now, especially because I'm working over the tail of the last, or the tail of this yarn. It's good to have more stitches in place to secure it. Okay. Alright. Moving the tail out of the way. So again, to transition from one space to the next, every time you're moving over that 3 cluster, it just takes 1 chain. If it's in a corner, it's 2 chains, otherwise 1 chain. And now I'm going to work in that section, and all I'm going to do is a single cluster, so only 3 double crochets. So yarn over, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. Oops. And then again, just 1 chain gets me to now my next corner, and here's the tail from that other working round. Insert, pulling up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. 2 more. So I'm kind of going through these a little bit quicker now, because you can always go back and study that double crochet. And even sometimes, again, I can't stress enough, just looking at other sources. 1, 2 chains, because sometimes seeing an illustration of the stitch being done as opposed to somebody's hands in a video can help it be clear. I mean, there's just, everybody's going to learn a little bit differently, especially when it comes to visual, because some of us aren't even really visual learners, so you need more words to read to help you. So don't give up. Okay, now just 1 chain, 1, 2, okay, and chain 1, and we're back at a corner, and so you just keep going along. Now you do 2 sets of clusters with 2 chains. I'm going to post some links, a couple websites that I have visited over the years that were really helpful for me for some granny square instruction. And those will be down there in the description. Okay. So just 1 chain, and now I'm in this section, so I only need 1 cluster. I'm just kind of going to go quickly to get to the end, just so you can see again how to finish the row. And then I'm going to show you how to join your granny squares. Again, a couple different methods. You can sew them together, you can crochet them together, you can join as you go. Sometimes it depends on the pattern of the granny square, which is going to work best, because there are more patterns that are called granny squares that are not just this traditional, 3 double crochet cluster. There's ones that even, some rows will be single crochet, and some rows, might just do different things, different patterns. Okay, so chain 1 at the finish, and here we have that 3 chain stitch. 1, 2, 3, or you can see the chains from the top, the stitches from the top, so it's 1, 2, and 3. Going to, it's a little bit tight, sometimes it's hard to see where you're moving into. There it is. And so I've pulled up a loop, pull that loop through, yarn over, so we have completed 3 rounds of the granny square, and now we're going to move on to learning about how to join them together, which was helpful if you're making a blanket or a scarf or something like that. So moving on to this square that I finished is 4 rounds. You can see there's 2 single clusters. There's a single cluster, right? 3 double crochets, and then there's 2 of the 3 double crochet clusters in each corner. So the method would be, if you wanted to keep going bigger and bigger, in each of these areas you would just have 3 double crochets. Each corner has 3 double crochet, 2 chain, 3 double crochet, and then I'm just separating the rest of these with 1 chain. My preferred method for joining squares together would be to crochet or join as I go, just for efficiency's sake. And a lot of times it just works out nicely that way. You may want to sew them together though, so I'm just going to show you that first. This is an unfinished square because I'm going to show you how to crochet them together. But I'm just going to show you this sewing method as well, because sometimes that just works better depending on the pattern. There's some granny squares that finish with a row that's like a solid row of crochet and it doesn't have these clusters, so it can be easier to sew them together. And some people just prefer that look. It's just whatever your preference. So there is the right side, wrong side to the granny square, this being considered the right side, and the back side, wrong side. Typically when you crochet a granny square, you do work always with that right side facing up. You just keep going around and around and around. You could, though, if you like that look, you could alternate, this row and then turn your work so that it would have that effect on the next row. You just keep turning, whatever your preference is. It's your designer's choice. So, when you're sewing squares together, this is when it can be helpful to have finished your square working in the corner, meaning like I would have begun sort of how this is now. Perhaps I started and only did half the corner and went all the way around and then finished in the corner. That would leave your tail at that corner edge, which you could use for sewing them together. But it works either way, because maybe if you're doing a long row of them, you wouldn't necessarily need to worry about having that tail. So okay, lining up your squares, right sides facing together, and you can see how those stitches line up together as well. And what you would do is just start with the second chain, because the first chain is correlating with this side of the square. Chain 2 helps you turn the corner and it's going that way. So we would start with that and we would just sew them together. And you can go through all 4 of the loops, or I like to just do 1 loop of each stitch. So to get started, you thread the needle, and I'm going to use the outside loops. So you can see here, just picking up those 2 outside loops and sewing it together. And then you just come over again, going from the blue square to the yellow square using the outside loops. And just as you go along, watching that you're still keeping your stitches aligned and just using those outside loops. In case you're not quite sure what I mean, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 loops here, and so I get my needle under both loops, and you can see a little more clearly I'm talking about these that are on the outside, because that will help keep the stitches on the back side. And I'm not going to do the whole row, we'll just finish with this stitch and then you'll be able to see how this looks. So you can see on the back side, of course, especially since I used a pink yarn not matching with what my color scheme. Alright, but here they are sewn together, kind of pull it tight towards the end, and you really can't see that yarn at all on the other side. So it's really cool too if you have the same color border, use the same color yarn, you wouldn't even see that join. So it's a look, but I'm not going to call it laziness. I'm going to say, out of efficiency's sake, I often crochet them together as I go. So here is my unfinished square. I stopped at a point of that cluster, and I did have the chain 1 in place. So chain 1. So to join them now, I'm going to do what's called a joining slip stitch or a joining chain stitch. Just going in through the front side of this other square, keeping the yarn at the back, pull up a loop, and then pull that loop through, and you have joined your square and also completed the second chain stitch of the corner. And then we'll just continue on with the cluster of 3 double crochets. And then we have to join again. So this is where I would normally do 1 chain. So instead I'm going to go through the front of the square, pull the yarn through, pulling up a loop, pull that loop right through this chain, or through that loop, and continue another cluster in that section. So I'm making these stitches pretty quick here just to help move along from there, and we'll focus on the joining at this point. Alright, so again it's a chain 1, so I just need to go through the front and see how the yarn is laying there. Just pull that up and pull it, whoops, slippery yarn, pull it right through. Gotta pull it tight and continue crocheting the cluster in this next section. One more, go through the front, pull up that loop, and now this can get a little bit confusing because you're in a corner, right? But you have to do first this cluster before we're doing any of the corner chains. So you just keep going with another cluster. And this next chain needs to be worked into the square because that's your joining chain. And then the second chain is going to turn the corner, not relating to this square, but relating to this row that we're going to complete. So we just go ahead, chain 1 like normal, and then continue on down that side of the square. And you just finish that off. Chain 1, and you just keep going till you get to that finish. Okay, so I can stop there, and you can see how that is on the front. Doesn't look so shabby. You can really see it on the back side though, so, but again, it just depends on your preference and your mood, your style of working. You'll have these other tails at the end that you would need to weave in. Again, just threading a needle and weaving them. I like to sometimes just I don't have a real great technique, I feel, when it comes to weaving in ends. I just kind of make it happen to secure it. I sometimes just go right into the stitch and go through there. I just kind of keep following where the stitch goes a little bit, going down into some of those loops, and then I can work it right through the base of these stitches. And that'll be pretty secure. Very carefully clip it off. And so that's what I had to show you today for getting started with crocheting a granny square. Again, it can be a really fun project with lots of applications, and I think it's a great way to get started, learning how to hold the hook and the tension. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to respond. Again, I'll have some links for other websites, And I look forward to bringing you some more crochet tutorials. I'm going to next time just do like making the foundation row and showing you that single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, that kind of stuff, so that you could start, crocheting something in a different fashion. And these are skills that will really help you out with, we have a lot of programming at the library for crochet where we do, we've done a granny square before a couple times. We do amigurumi, which is where you've basically only use the single crochet and you work in rounds, and it's how we make like little creatures. We made pumpkins and animals. I can show you, we did pencil. It's a giant blue pencil, so that's fun. And once you get started with just some of those basics, you can really do a lot and go a long way with crochet. Well, thanks for joining us. Again, like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you soon.